All right, maybe you missed our flipped session or you want a preview of what we're going to do tonight. The first thing we're going to do is you're going to have some time to look at some material on your own. Then I will sort of address what you hopefully learned from that material on your own. And then finally, you'll get to create for your students. A tip I want to share with you before we get going is when I do Screencastify, I actually change what is normally in the URL that says edit, where you have your slides, where you view, where you create them. I change that word in the URL to be present. And the reason I do that is so that I still have access to all of my tabs so I can quickly navigate around as I'm demonstrating something, and also because then I can turn on closed captions. Most often, YouTube or the recorder you use will change to closed captions, but just in case it doesn't, here's a quick way to differentiate. So you can do this with regular present mode, but that takes your whole screen. So I like to just change it here in the URL. All right. One of the things that you may be wondering is why in the world in 2020 are we talking about flipped learning? And I think that is a really good question. It is pretty old. In 2007 is when it sort of hit the education world, and John Bergman and Aaron Sams, that you can see there, were sort of the founders of it. I think they are the founders. Edutopia has a great series called Flipped Learning Toolkit by those two. And I think the main reason to think about it now is our kids in this remote hybrid situation have to get the content on their own. So using those ideals of flipped learning that have been around now for over a decade are a great way to blend the environment and do some small group instruction and help our kids be self-learners in the remote realm. For this learning time, there is a link to this activity. If you're in our Google Classroom, it's 15.2. If you're not in our classroom, I'll put this link in the comments of YouTube, but here are 8 sources. What I suggest you do is choose the sources that you think speak to you the most. A quick overview, these first 2 just talk about flipped learning, and one is in the remote classroom and one is using video. This one is strictly Screencastify, and it's a step-by-step guide that I adapted that I got somewhere. Hopefully I give them credit in the document on how to flip your presentations. It's real similar to what I'm doing now. The Pear Deck one, I know a lot of you are familiar with that, is just a blog post on ideas to use that tool to flip. And same with Nearpod. Nearpod is probably the main way I flip my classroom, but there is a blog post here. That's number 5. Number 6 is an infographic that takes you through kind of the most simple things you can do with presentations you already have to the most advanced. The forms link takes you to a form that it actually flips the learning about flipped learning. So Google Forms is a great way to sort of record that participation and get some formative feedback from your kids when they are learning content on their own. And so this form is an example for that. And Insert Learning is a really, really cool tool. And the reason I've included that here is because it's a great way to flip that learning of reading, but also keeping some engagement and giving you some information. So right now, stop the video and learn as much or as little as you would like from these resources. Well, I hope you learned quite a bit from those resources. One of the things that ideally you processed is what this picture shows you here, is that flipped learning takes the traditional model and turns it so that the kids learn the basic information on their own, or the bottom two tiers of that Bloom's taxonomy. And then when we're together, whether that's via Zoom or in the classroom, we're having conversations, we're creating, we're troubleshooting, and it's just a much more dynamic way to apply that sort of basic knowledge that those kiddos are able to get on their own, especially now that we've got great technology. This is also another image that I just love. In the traditional classroom, and sometimes still you need to do this, you need to sort of give them the information step by step. And so you're the person on the stage. And in flipped learning, you're sort of just the guide on the side, or what I like to call the lead learner. That's a code.org term, lead learner. I'm going to say this name wrong because I don't have great French whatever, but I think it's Jean Piaget, that great developmental psychologist. He has this quote that has stuck with me since I was in college. When you teach a child something, you take away forever their chance of discovering it for themselves. And so when you think of this quote, try and think about that flipped learning and why, although it's a little bit tougher sometimes for our kids who have been schoolified, it really allows them to discover at their own pace, and they get to be excited about learning something new that we are just so used to knowing. So just keep that in mind as you're going forward. A couple of other questions to think about and perhaps journal are how flipped learning jives with your philosophy of teaching. We all know that teaching is an art, and it's very, very stemmed in your beliefs. So think about how it jives or doesn't jive, or how you could make it work. And of course, as always, there were tons of resources that were missed in just the few resources I gave you. So think about what those resources are that you already use, that you could easily take and flip the content delivery for your kids. Talk to your colleagues, do some researching. Before we close, too, I want to say, honestly, in my remote teaching right now, most of my flipping is just a chance for those kiddos who aren't present to learn the content, and for the kids who maybe need to hear it more than once, at their own time. So just because it's flipped learning doesn't necessarily mean we're asking an hour of homework before class for them to learn the content. Another way it's used a lot for me is just quick warm-ups. When I'm taking that remote attendance and getting everyone in, there is a warm-up where they watch a video for 5 minutes to get that basic information. This is just a reminder, it is November 10th of 2020, so we only have 52 days left of the whole school year. Or not school year, but year. A lot more for the school year. But go ahead and set a goal on what you're going to do to increase the learning for your learners and to make your job more enjoyable. So 52 days till January 1, 2021. There is a Wakelet. If you search Shelley Stanton, there is a Wakelet for flipped learning where I put all sorts of great resources. And I hope you have fun flipping out.